here today, and so I thought we would cover filters. What are filters? How good are filters? And yada yada yada. So I thought today would be a good idea to start on that, and then Monday I'll talk about oscillators. So let's get started. So the first thing is I loaded up one of my demo reels to give to audio engineers, although there's a peak in here and I don't know why. Yeah, that peak. It could just be a glitch in the system, but nope, it's definitely better. Oh, that's just the market. Anyways, what is a filter? Well, a filter is will shape any raw sound between going through the different frequencies. Like for example, this low pass filter only filters the low signals through. So I'll give you a demo of that now. So you can only hear the low filters, the frequencies right now. Now sweep through all the different sounds. So have a listen as I map this for you. So notice how we went through about 4.85 kilohertz, and the sounds were pretty good, but not quite as crisp. That's because when it sweeps through, it goes all the way through the different frequencies. So this is a low pass. A high pass is just the opposite. So instead of hearing the lows, we would hear the highs. So I'll run you through that. So that's, oh, I also forgot to put a limiter on this, even though the track is already mastered. It's because the Q of the filter is giving it a little bit more of a boost than what it should be given. So there's not just high pass and low pass. There's actually like, this is a notch filter. No, this is a notch. This is a CombFilter. Now, a CombFilter only sweeps through the different frequencies depending on your Q. So let's say I sent this 20 and I started sweeping. I would get the about 100 hertz or so, and then about 6.5 kilohertz. So you're only grasping certain frequencies, and depending on the Q, that's how much, how narrow your frequencies get. So I'll run you through that, and I'll start at 26 hertz. Okay, so when dealing with frequencies in a filter setting, there's also a notch. Now, a notch is different from a high pass and a low pass. The notch allows you to have both of those going, so meaning that you're combining the low pass and the high pass. So if you were to stick them together, you would get the notch. the notch actually takes out frequencies as you start to sweep through them. So let's say you have a very big bass. You want to set the notch to all the way to 26 Hertz. So that way you get the loud sound of the bass, but instead of the drop, the drop in sound will pick up right after the low frequencies. So the Q is actually meant for sweeping, for how much the filters should amount to each other. So if I set this all the way to 3Q, it's going to bring in all the low frequencies until this very, very small spike, and then it'll pick up right after that spike. So you'll be able to hear all the frequencies, but the notch filter is actually supposed to add characteristics, so be careful how you use this. If you set it to 1.5, I think, yeah, 1.5, you start to get nice crisp low bass, but right as the mids and the highs come in, it's going to sweep out some lower frequencies. So you can actually use this as more of a distortion unit than sweeping out different effects. Okay, so now that I've explained the basics, low pass filter, the high pass filter, the comb filter, and the notch filter. You can actually automate all the different parameters, but I just want to talk about the different types today. So that's only the basics of filtering. There's also such things as comb filters. Well, actually, harmonic filters is what they're called. And you can take out different stabs in your mix. Like you can take out the low, you can take out the mid-low, the mid, and the high, and you can keep going with all the more filters you can keep adding. So there, just created another one, so I'll keep this as mid-high, and this one will be high. So have a listen as I sweep through all the different parameters in the negative harmonic filter. I should note that this is a demo of all my stuff to give to a producer if I'm applying for a position. So if you hear stuff start to change into more rock, and because I give an example of all the different types of music genres I can provide, so if you start to listen more and more, it'll start to change more and more. So this takes out, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, this negative harmonics filter takes out waves that are a little bit too crisp. And you can do that with the spectrum as well. So, as you can tell, this waveform all the way. And if you have your mouse over it, it'll tell you 22.8 kilohertz. So I will set that to as high as it'll go. And that should be good. There's also messing around with the harmonics can be a bit tricky, but you can also create like cool, like harmonics filter would be good for a harmonic instrument. So like the harmonica and things like that. How ironic. Anyways, you can also add frequencies. So it's not just negative, it's also positive. We'll get over here in a minute. So as I start to play the additive positive, you'll start to hear very crisp peaks in this mix, and you'll also hear a lot of interesting lows or sharper mids because the frequency on this is only supposed to add a certain detail. And I'm making this copy exaggerated, making the sound exaggerated so that way you know not to turn it up all the way to plus 15 because it's ridiculous and it would add way too much characteristic and overpower your mix. So I'm gonna play the track where it left off, right here. Nope, it would actually be right here. So have a listen as I sweep through all the different filters with each one. Also, I should say that this number 1 right here is only going to sweep in between 0 and 2. So if, like I did with my previous example on negative CombFilters, negative harmonics, I actually sweep through all of the parameters and it wasn't that big of a deal. So once I started messing around inside where the little loops I contained it, like 1 and 3 is where the range 2 can go, and 2 and 4 is where 3 can go, and so on and so forth. It would be better if I just left it in its own little bubble so that way you can hear a much greater impact instead of hearing very subtle changes. So have a listen. So you can also, I just wanted to demonstrate that filter type. It's also pretty crazy. So let me reset this device actually, because I want to show you something different. So you have the high quality mode there that I'll be talking about that later. So let me reset all gains. There we go. So an EQ8 not only sweeps through, but you can also add different filter types to this EQ. So I can add a high pass filter so that way you sweep out all the different highs. And you can have a low pass filter, sweep out all the lows. I'm sorry, sweep out all the highs until you get to the lows. Just displays lows. There's also things like an old school Razor band. That's not actually the name. This is just how I was taught. So this band actually raises all the levels, but in a very smooth curve. So I thought that was interesting. There's also notch filters, so you can not just get different types of filters, but you can also add to these very different types of filters. This is a proper notch filter. This is a additive, so it can either go positive or negative. It doesn't really have a band to cling to, so it's neutral. Then you got your low and your low pass filter that sweeps through it. That other one, this is a high pass filter, but it's a much more old school. It's a high shelf filter and a low shelf filter. So I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I can add my own like different unique bands, like a low to a sweep to add a different impact. I thought that was kind of cool. What if I start to mimic waveforms? And so with the different waveforms, you start to get much crazier sounds, but in a different dynamical range. So have a listen without, and then I'll play you this crazy madness of a waveform. You know what I call this filter? I call it the perfect mid-side. The perfect mid-side is a contradiction waveform. As you can see, this is negative and this is positive. So they interact with each other. And surprisingly enough, I made the trash can filter. The trash can filter is a very old school waveform. And you can actually see it on trash. So let me load up trash for you, and I will show you the trash can filter. It sounds very similar to this. So if I start to copy waveforms into this mixture, you can also get very old school results. So you don't need things like isotope trash. Even though it can give some different characteristic, you can actually just copy the waveform into EQ8 or mess around it a bit, and you can probably get the same exact results without using anything else. I'm just using a limiter to black out some of the unpleasant peaks in our mix, and that's all I'm doing. That and an EQ8, and it creates a lot of different characteristics. So let me see if I can find you the trash can filter. So let me turn off presets. And so yeah, distortion, gentle push, acid fuzz, let's see, retro, iron fuzz, tube, tape saturator, those are all perfect. Yeah, but there's one in here that's called trash can, and it sounds exactly like a trash can. I think it's actually the radio. So let me see if I can find that. Harmonic control. Let's zoom in a bit. So, oh, sorry, I was pushing the wrong button. There we go. So positive fuzz, smooth, straight fuzz, cheap, digital, analog, tape, push, nasty boy. Let's see. Then you've got all the different ones. There's a noise art, little popper, that's pretty close, hard limits. Yeah, elastic trash, that's what it sounds like. So, let me get out, and I'll play you the raw signal, and then I'll show you isotope, turn it off, then show you the EQ. So what I did is the preset I had on it would not affect the mix. So I'm actually going to go back to that elastic trash and show you the difference. On and then off and then off. I'm sorry, and then on and then off. So you can get very different characteristics. So I wanted to talk about a filter type that is currently being used to create different harmonics. And I'll show you that by saying this. You can get, with this waveform, you can get vocal sounds. So when you add a notch filter to a rising low pass filter, and as the low pass filter sweeps over that notch on the different bands, you start to get a very low grunting sound. Now, I'll drag this over to my MIDI. I'll throw on maybe silent and show you the different types. So let me load up a hollow phase, play a few notes for you, and turn it on and off and show you what this filter can do. Let me turn it down an octave. Add a limiter so I don't blow your speakers. I'm sorry. See, you start to get more of a lower frequency. So as soon as you start, you can also turn up the Q a bit too. But as soon as you start messing around with filters, I would say copy other programs' waveforms if you want. If you don't have the money for that program, but you can clearly see the waveform, just drop in an EQ, just start drawing it in, and it'll sound the exact same. You can also use, like, I bought the expansion amp, and it comes with a cabinet, so that's perfect for this stuff too. You can start to get louder, wider sounds that don't disrupt your bass. That don't disrupt your mix, I'm sorry. So I'll show you that with a little bit demonstration. So I'm going to create 5 bars. I'm going to just create one note, C1. Let me take this note, hold shift, and then down arrow. There, C1. And let me turn off that one and loop it and show you what modulation can do for this frequency type. It's very, very crazy. So I'll show you a little bit of automation now, and then come Monday I'll talk about oscillators and how to create the different sounds for these filter types. So it's going to be very exciting. So filter 1, frequency A. We're not in B, we're in A. And I'm going to draw in a note so that way it sweeps through it instantly. There is no rising effect. See? And if I add a rising effect, you can start to get a much crazier type of sound. This is what's known as a growl, and you use it for a lot of dubstep. So, what's cool is you can create a lane for itself. And what I like to do is copy a segment and paste it before. Excuse me. And this is how you create sound design. And I'll show you that in a much later course. So have a listen to what I've created. Of course, let me see. This is 1/4. You can go down to 1/16 and make it even crazier. So I'll copy segment, move it over, copy more, yada yada yada. Da 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 da. Da da. Okay, now have a listen. You can also adjust the different points manually if you choose to do that. And if it sounds a little bit too crazy for you, I can always duplicate this, and the automation comes with it. So I'm just going to copy this segment, this smaller segment, and then play you guys out. Duplicate it across. Just go crazy with it. I'll see you guys Monday.